help me reach 1,000 subscribers. Please like the video and share your thoughts on the video. Your feedback helps make the contents better. Now let's get to the story.
My wife stood in front of my desk with her arms crossed, looking at me like I was something she'd scraped off her Louboutin heels. Her new business associate, Derek, stood behind her, smirking like he'd just won the lottery. I guess in a way, he thought he had. "I'm not asking you, Marcus. I'm telling you," she said, her voice cold enough to freeze vodka. "You will apologize to Derek for your disrespectful behavior at the company party or your salary is suspended. And that promotion to Director of International Operations, consider it on hold indefinitely." I looked at Derek. Derek looked at me. The guy had the kind of face that made you want to check if your wallet was still in your pocket. "All right," I said. Just those 2 words. Nothing more, nothing less. My wife blinked. She'd probably prepared a whole speech about how I was being unreasonable, how I needed to think about our future, how Derek was very important to the company's growth. But I'd robbed her of that moment. "All right," she repeated, like she couldn't believe it was that easy. "All right," I said again, and went back to looking at my computer screen. That was Christmas Eve. By Christmas morning, everything had changed. But let me back up a bit. My name is Marcus Chen. I'm 34 years old, and until very recently, I was the Senior Operations Manager at Hartwell Industries, a mid-sized manufacturing company that my father-in-law built from the ground up. I've been with the company for 8 years, married to his daughter Victoria for 6 of those years. I'm the guy who fixed the supply chain problems that were bleeding the company dry. I'm the one who negotiated the contracts with our overseas partners that saved us millions. I'm the reason we expanded into 3 new markets in the last 2 years. But apparently none of that mattered as much as Derek's abs and his ability to laugh at my wife's jokes. Derek Harrison, 28 years old, MBA from some expensive school where his daddy donated a library. Hired 6 months ago as Strategic Growth Consultant, which as far as I could tell meant he showed up late, left early, and spent most of his time in my wife's office with the door closed. Victoria Chen, nee Hartwell, 32 years old, Stanford educated, CEO of Hartwell Industries for the past 3 years after her father stepped back due to health issues. Smart, ambitious, and apparently under the impression that marriage vows had an expiration date. The thing about being the son-in-law of the company founder is that people always assume you got where you are because of who you married. Never mind that I had a degree in industrial engineering from Georgia Tech. Never mind that I worked 60-hour weeks while Victoria was getting her executive MBA. Never mind that her father once told me I was the best hire he'd ever made. People see the last name and make assumptions. Victoria started seeing Derek differently about 3 months ago. I'm not an idiot. I noticed the late meetings, the new perfume, the way she'd smile at her phone and then quickly lock it when I walked into the room, the business trips that Derek somehow always needed to go on too. I didn't say anything at first. Part of me hoped I was wrong. The other part of me was already planning. The Christmas party was 2 weeks ago. Open bar, fancy venue, everyone pretending to like each other for one night. I was standing by the buffet table when I heard Derek talking to some of the junior staff. Yeah, Derek does okay with operations, but he's not exactly leadership material, you know? Too focused on the details, not enough big-picture thinking. That's why we brought me in. I walked over with a plate of shrimp. "Hey, Derek," I said, loud enough for people to hear. "Quick question. Do you actually know what our gross margin was last quarter, or do you just throw around buzzwords and hope nobody notices you haven't contributed anything measurable to this company?" His face went red. "That's not appropriate." "You're right," I said. "Let me rephrase. What exactly do you do here besides follow my wife around like a golden retriever?" That's when Victoria appeared, grabbed my arm hard enough to leave marks, and dragged me into a side room. "What is wrong with you?" she hissed. "Me? Your boyfriend is taking credit for my work and spreading rumors that I'm incompetent." "He's not my boyfriend. He's a valued member of our executive team." "Right. Is that what we're calling it now?" She slapped me. Not hard, but hard enough. "You are paranoid and embarrassing. Derek has been nothing but professional." I laughed. Actually laughed. "Victoria, I have the hotel receipts. I have the text messages. I have everything." Her face went pale.
but she recovered quick. That's the thing about Victoria. She's always been good at playing corporate politics. If you try to embarrass me or this company with false accusations, I will destroy you. Do you understand? I'm the CEO. My father trusts my judgment. You're just an employee who happens to be married to me." "Noted," I said, and walked out of the party. I thought that would be the end of it. Maybe we'd have a real conversation, maybe even counseling. Maybe she'd realize she'd crossed a line. But instead, she doubled down.
Christmas Eve, she showed up at my office with Derek like I mentioned. The ultimatum was simple. Apologize to Derek for my unfounded accusations and unprofessional behavior or face professional consequences. She'd frame it as performance issues. My salary would be suspended pending a review. The promotion I'd been promised, the one that would make me Director of International Operations with oversight of our new London office, would go to someone else, probably Derek. She stood there waiting for me to argue, to beg, to negotiate. That's what the old Marcus would have done. The Marcus who believed in the marriage, who thought love and loyalty meant something. "All right," I said instead. I didn't apologize to Derek. I just agreed to her terms. I could see the confusion in her eyes, but she was too proud to ask what I meant. They left my office, probably to go celebrate their victory somewhere private. I made 3 phone calls. The first was to Richard Hartwell, my father-in-law. He was home for the holidays, recovering from his surgery. I asked if I could stop by that evening. The second was to James Morrison, the lawyer I'd quietly retained 2 months ago when I first suspected what was happening. The third was Elizabeth Park, the head of Hartwell Industries Board of Directors and Victoria's godmother. Then I started packing. I showed up at Richard's house around 7. He lived in a mansion in Buckhead, the kind of place with a circular driveway and columns that made you feel like you were visiting a museum. He answered the door himself. He looked tired, older than his 63 years, but his handshake was still firm. "Marcus, come in, come in. How are you holding up? Victoria mentioned there was some tension at work." "I bet she did," I said. We sat in his study, a wood-paneled room that smelled like leather and old books. He poured us both a scotch. "Richard, I need to tell you something, and you're not going to like it." He set down his glass. "I'm listening." I told him everything. The affair, Derek's incompetence and how he was being propped up, the hotel receipts I'd found when Victoria left her laptop open, the text messages I'd recovered from the cloud backup she didn't know I had access to, the way Derek was actively undermining me while taking credit for my work. And then I told him about the ultimatum. Richard's face went from concerned to angry to something I'd never seen before. Disappointment. Deep, crushing disappointment. "And you're sure about this?" he asked quietly. "I have documentation, months of it. I didn't want to believe it either." He stood up, walked to the window, looked out at his perfectly manicured lawn. "He trusted her with my company," he said. "I thought she was ready. She's good at her job when she's actually doing it, but Derek's been a distraction, and she's letting her personal life affect her professional judgment. She's creating a hostile work environment, abusing her authority, and exposing the company to potential lawsuits." Richard turned around. "What are you going to do?" "I already did it. I accepted the London transfer." His eyes widened. "What transfer?" "The one I asked the board for 3 months ago, Director of International Operations, based out of London. You signed off on it in October, remember? It was supposed to be announced after the new year, but I accelerated it. I spoke with Elizabeth this afternoon. She expedited the paperwork. I'm flying out tomorrow afternoon." "Tomorrow? It's Christmas." "Day after Christmas, there's a red-eye. I'll be in London by Friday morning." Richard sat down heavily. "You're leaving her." "I'm leaving the situation. The divorce papers will be filed next week. James Morrison is handling it." "And the evidence?" "That depends on Victoria," I said. "If she wants to keep this quiet and professional, we can do that. Fair division of assets, I walk away clean. But if she wants to make this ugly, If she tries to damage my reputation or interfere with my career, then everything goes to the board. Every text message, every hotel receipt, every piece of evidence showing that she's been having an affair with a subordinate and using company resources to do it. Richard looked at me for a long moment. "You've been planning this." "Since October," I admitted. "I hoped I was wrong, I really did, but I'm not going to let her destroy everything I've built just because she got bored with our marriage." He nodded slowly. "The board meets in January. I'll be there." "I know," I said. "Elizabeth already told me." We finished our drinks in silence. Before I left, Richard shook my hand again. "You're a good man, Marcus. Better than I think my daughter deserves right now. I'm sorry." "Not your fault," I said. "You raised her right. She made her own choices." I went home to the condo Victoria and I shared in Midtown. She wasn't there. Out celebrating with Derek, probably. I'd already packed most of my important stuff. Everything else I'd have the movers handle after New Year's. I left a note on the kitchen counter. "Accepted the London position. Moving tomorrow. Lawyer will be in touch." Then I went to a hotel for the night. Christmas morning, I was at the airport when my phone started blowing up. Calls, texts, voicemails, all from Victoria. The first message: "What the hell do you mean you're moving to London?" Second: "You can't just leave. We need to talk about this." Third: "Marcus, stop being dramatic. Come home." Fourth: "My father called me. What did you tell him?" Fifth: "Answer your damn phone."
I didn't answer. I was already through security, sitting at the gate, drinking overpriced coffee and reading the news on my tablet. The final message came through just as they called my boarding group. "Please tell me you didn't send it." I smiled, turned off my phone, got on the plane. What Victoria didn't know was that I'd spent the last 3 months not just collecting evidence, but building relationships. The London office needed someone who understood our operations inside and out. I'd been the obvious choice, except Victoria kept blocking it because it would mean us being apart. Now she'd basically forced my hand by threatening my career. Elizabeth Park, Victoria's godmother and the head of the board, had always liked me. She was old school, believed in merit and loyalty. When I'd shown her the evidence of Victoria's affair and the professional misconduct, she'd been furious. "This is exactly the kind of behavior we can't tolerate," she said. "CEO or not, she's not above the rules." The board had quietly approved my transfer, my promotion, and a very generous compensation package. They'd also put Victoria on notice. If Derek didn't show measurable results by the end of Q1, he was gone. And if any evidence emerged of the affair becoming public, there would be consequences for her position as well. I landed in London on Friday morning. The company had set me up with a furnished apartment in Canary Wharf. Nice place, with a view of the Thames. I had the weekend to settle in before starting my new position on Monday. Saturday afternoon, my phone rang. Richard Hartwell. "Marcus, I wanted you to hear this from me first. I called an emergency board meeting for next week. Victoria is being placed on administrative leave pending a review of her conduct." "That seems extreme," I said, and I meant it. I didn't want to destroy her career. I just wanted out. "Derek Harrison was arrested last night," Richard said. "Turns out he's been embezzling funds, small amounts but consistent. He was using a shell company to charge consulting fees for work that was never done." I sat down on my new couch. "I didn't know about that." "I believe you, but Victoria signed off on all the payments. Either she was complicit or she was negligent. Either way, the board can't overlook it. Elizabeth is pushing for her removal." "And you?" He was quiet for a moment. "I don't know, Marcus. She's my daughter, but she's also cost this company its best operations manager, brought in a criminal, and exposed us to God knows how much liability. I'm disappointed doesn't even begin to cover it." "I'm sorry, Richard." "Don't be. You did the right thing. The London office is in good hands." We hung up. I stood at my window, looking out at the gray London sky, and felt something I hadn't felt in months: relief.
The divorce was finalized in March. Victoria tried to fight it at first, claimed I'd abandoned her, that I was being vindictive. But when James showed her the evidence we had, including proof that she'd used company funds to take Derek on trips, she settled quickly. She got to keep the condo. I didn't want it anyway. I got my retirement accounts, my investments, and my reputation intact. She had to sign an NDA as part of the settlement. Derek took a plea deal, 18 months minimum security prison and restitution. Turns out he'd been running the same scam at his previous job. Victoria was allowed to resign from Hartwell Industries instead of being fired. The board made it clear that any negative comments about me or the company would result in the evidence becoming public. She landed on her feet, though. Some tech startup hired her as COO 6 months later. Richard and I still talk. He came to visit me in London in June. We had dinner at a pub near my flat, and he told me he was proud of how I'd handled everything. "You could have destroyed her," he said. "You had every right to, but you didn't." "That's not who I am," I said. "I just wanted out of a bad situation." "Still," he said, raising his pint, "you're a better man than most." The London office thrived under my leadership. Within a year, we'd expanded into 2 new European markets and increased revenue by 40%. The board offered me a VP position, which I accepted. I started dating again. Nothing serious yet, but it's nice to have options, to be with someone who sees me for who I am, not just as a means to an end. Sometimes, late at night, I wonder if Victoria ever thinks about how differently things could have gone. If she'd been honest, if she'd just told me she wasn't happy, we could have ended things like adults. I would have been hurt, but I would have understood. Instead, she chose to humiliate me, to use her position to try to force me into compliance, to risk everything for someone who turned out to be a con artist. I didn't destroy her career. I didn't leak the affair to the press. I didn't drag her through the mud. I just left, and in leaving, I let the consequences of her own actions catch up with her. The best revenge isn't some elaborate scheme. It's not public humiliation or calculated cruelty. The best revenge is living well and letting karma do its thing. By the time Victoria tried to reach out, months after the divorce was finalized, I was already someone else, someone who'd moved on, moved up, and moved forward. I read her email once. She said she was sorry, that she'd made mistakes, that she hoped I was doing well. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. My name is Marcus Chen. I'm 35 years old now. I'm the Vice President of International Operations at Hartwell Industries, based in London. I have a great flat, a job I love, and a life that's entirely my own. And every Christmas Eve, I raise a glass to myself, to the moment I said, "All right," and everything changed. To knowing when to walk away, and to the satisfaction of watching someone smile freeze mid-breath when they realize they've lost something they can't get back. Thanks for reading Marcus's story. Sometimes the best revenge is really just living well and letting karma do its thing. Now I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below telling me where you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories reach, from New York to Nigeria, Tokyo to Toronto. It's amazing to know we're all connected through these wild tales of revenge and redemption. Plus, I always wonder if revenge stories hit different depending on where you're from. So let me know your location and whether you think Marcus handled this the right way. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed the story, subscribe for more revenge tales that'll make you say, "Oh damn," and hit that notification bell so you never miss when someone gets the karma they deserve. See you in the next one.